Hey guys, we just got done playing Diablo 1 on stream, and one of my favorite things about the older games in the 90s is that they come equipped with amazing manuals, and Diablos is no exception. In this video, we're going to talk about the craziest stories in Diablo 1's manual entries. First off, we all know the Archangel Inarius, but before he was retconned in the Sin War books after Diablo 2, the story of his downfall and his imprisonment in hell was quite different and a lot more gruesome. In the description of the Overlord's entry of the Bestiary, the first line states, even the Seraphim, which was retconned to Archangels, were not immune to corruption, and one such Seraphim was named Inarius. Now Inarius, this is similar to him currently canonically, very prideful, very arrogant, but back then he was also very obsessed with his own beauty and his charm, and he was so arrogant that he thought himself above angels and demons. As such, what did he do? He left the heavens and created his own domain with his own followers, and in the middle of this domain was a large cathedral surrounded by nothing but mirrors so he could admire his beauty in, and crystals. Now, wanting to prove his superiority to both angels and demons, what do him and his followers do? They proceed to lay siege to one of Mephisto's strongholds where his dark followers lay in worship. Now, before this event, the prime evils just saw Inarius as an annoying nuisance, but after he boldly attacked Mephisto's property, Mephisto was not just going to stand around. So Mephisto and his forces appeared, overwhelmed Inarius and his forces, and captured them into hell. Now, Inarius' followers were taken, tortured, corrupted, and turned into the gruesome demons known as the Overlords, which you see here. And I could be wrong, but the Butcher in Diablo 1 kind of looks like an Overlord, doesn't he? So maybe he was a former follower of Inarius. Inarius himself, similar canonically to what happened now, was bound by heavy chains. But that's not it. Inarius was placed in a room of mirrors, just like his cathedral, but then what did Mephisto do? He took hooks, ripped off his wings, ripped off his eyelids, and bound him there for all eternity, where all he can see is his deformed form in the mirrors that surround him. That is a brutal, and as a dark fantasy fan, fantastic depiction of when Inarius was first ever mentioned in Diablo lore. So continuing to discuss Mephisto's forces, next up is talking about the magma demons that you face in the caves in Diablo 1. So in their description, it states that when the heavens attacked Mephisto and managed to draw blood from Mephisto, every drop of blood that hit the ground formed into one of these magma demons who goes ahead and flings, you know it, magma at their enemies. Now, number 3, to round out Mephisto's forces, we have these skeletons. Now, Mephisto is known to resurrect the dead as skeletal warriors to attack his enemies. And in the case of Tristram, all the skeletons that you fight in the labyrinth are reanimated Horadric monks that must have been activated from Lazarus due to his corruption by Mephisto. Now, that's it around the cool stories of Mephisto's forces. But before we proceed to the stories of additional enemies, I want to segue the skeleton conversation over to the entry around the spell Resurrection. Now, when the Horadrim were hunting down Mephisto in his Fortress of Bone, which was in the deserts of Aranok where Lucalane is located, one problem that they face is every time one of their forces fell, Mephisto would reanimate them to attack their former brothers in the Horadrim forces. So what happened? A white figure, an apparition of sorts, came to the Horadric forces and taught them the spell of resurrection. And this spell allowed them to bring back their companions upon their death to continue the battle against Mephisto's forces instead of him using them against the Horadrim. And the way it worked is that it brought the soul back to the former corpse and allowed it to function once more. To further combat Mephisto and the undead, we have another cool spell entry, and that is the story behind the spell Holy Bolt. So although the Horadrim were known to be the world's greatest spellcasters, that is not to say that the priests and followers of the light were not capable as well. There was one specific priest, his name being Cathan, that when he realized that Mephisto's constant hordes of undead were incredibly troublesome in the effort to bind him, he came up with the idea of binding combining holy light with a bolt of fire and thus creating the Holy Bolt, which is an incredibly powerful spell that specifically targets undead forces. Next, we will talk about some cool entries under Baal's bestiary, and the first of his minions we want to talk about are the good old Fallen, which have shown up time and time again ever since Diablo 1. So the Fallen are small, impish terrors that always attack in swarms. In fact, in Tristram, what they were known for is surfacing during the night in secret and stabbing sleeping villagers to death before retreating back into the labyrinth. Although they're not independently strong, they are known to always be in packs, hence why we see so many of them in Diablo 1. However, due to their small stature, if an overwhelming presence of strength is shown to them, so for example, if you kill one of their own, they are known to be filled with fear and flee. Now, regarding one of these Fallen, during one of their night attacks, they were the ones who grabbed Wirt and dragged him back into the labyrinth before Griswold was able to save him. And thus came the story of how Wirt lost his foot. Next, we have the Spitting Terrors, which is quite the gruesome entry. So the Spitting Terrors, they were actually hellhounds that served under Baal. Now, Baal, after a particularly violent battle, he loved to gather his brothers and feast upon human remains and other disgusting viscera. And who but the hounds who surrounded Baal would feast on the scraps of Baal's victims. Along with their nefarious diet, just being around Baal caused them to twist into these horrors that would spit this acid so powerful it could melt the sturdiest of armors. And the acidity in their stomachs is so strong that upon their defeat, they leave a puddle that continues to damage anyone who happens to step in it. And God knows I experienced this when I first entered the caves in Diablo 1. Now, moving on to Diablo's forces, there is one entry that really stood out to me, and that is the story of the Hidden. The Hidden are known to be the boogeyman of Sanctuary. So all of the nightmares based in Sanctuary are due to the influence of the Hidden, who actually live in the nightmares of children. Now, the Hidden, they live 1 foot in the physical plane and 1 foot in the ethereal, where our dreams and nightmares happen to have a foothold. And with Diablo's influence, they were able to physically manifest and attack those most vulnerable to their fear. As being minions of Diablo, fear is their #1 energy source. And last but certainly not least, I want to talk about the cool entry around how the town portal spell actually functions. So apparently what the Horadric did is that they planted gateways at certain hubs all throughout Sanctuary for them to quickly navigate in while in combat. What this spell does, it allows the individual to become attuned to the closest gateway and create a portal that transports them to that location, which in the Diablo series basically represents the closest town that you are in. That's all for this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy Diablo lore content like this, please consider subscribing, liking, and giving a comment with your thoughts. Also, I am playing through all the Diablo games with a story and lore-based emphasis. So if you want to jump in, check it out. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitch or tune in to YouTube where I stream as well. Thank you for watching.